Getting into college is hard. Getting into an Ivy League school is nearly impossible these days. But some of America's wealthiest families have figured out a way to beat the system and guarantee acceptance, even though their child may not fit the bill. This week on Two Crime Newsies, we're talking about the college admission scandal that rocked the higher education system and brought some of the biggest names in Hollywood down. Thanks for being with us for another week. I'm Jen.
I'm Tina.
Hi, Tina.
Hi.
We are talking about Operation Varsity Blues, the college admissions scandal, which we watched on Netflix.
We're back with another scandal. My favorite. I feel like my two favorite worlds are colliding. You have a true crime documentary and rich people like the Real Housewives.
It's a good way of describing the show, I
I
think.
love it.
Yeah. The way this is shot, I really enjoyed. They shoot it kind of like a docudrama. So there's dialogue adapted from FBI wiretap transcripts that were apparently released by the government. And you have real people talking to the camera. And then you also have people who are portraying these people on the screen. So you have actors portraying real people, and then you also have some real people.
This was a lot of fun to watch. I also enjoyed the way that they did this.
So back in 2019, 50 people were charged for part of this scandal, including Lori Loughlin, who was on Full House. We also have Felicity Huffman, who was in one of my favorite shows, Desperate Housewives. And according to Time magazine, Loughlin and her husband, who's a fashion designer named Massimo Gianelli, I think that's how you say it.
Gianoli, yeah, that one's
Paid $500,000 to get their children admitted to the University of Southern California. And Huffman paid $15,000 to this guy who doctored her daughter's SAT score. Let's dig into this, Tina. We are introduced to somebody on the show named Richard Singer, who is a former basketball coach turned college admissions counselor, which I think that's an interesting journey, right?
Yeah.
It's a very interesting journey. He started working in Sacramento in the
1900s.
I mean, technically, I wrote the 1900s in my show notes. I guess it was the 1900s.
Sure.
He started a business called Future Stars, and he would go around to parents who hired him and counsel kids on how to get into college. Now, former students of his are interviewed in the show, and they said that he always dressed like a basketball coach because he felt like he was coaching kids. Former clients who had used him are interviewed, and they say that he wasn't very personable. He wasn't really approachable.
We meet Daniel Golden, who is author of The Price of Admission, and says in his research, the court documents show that Singer's college admission scheme started in 2011. But in his own research, he said Singer started decades before that on a smaller scale. He also talks about how interesting it is that Singer kind of came out of nowhere and was able to work his way into a high social circle and make a ton of money.
He made a lot of money.
Golden says in Singer's role as a basketball coach, he was volatile and tended to scream at the players when things would go wrong. And at some point, he and the rest of the coaching staff were let go, and that's when he decided to switch careers and become the first independent college advisor in Sacramento because he knew how athletic admissions worked. He saw it firsthand when he was a college coach. He also thinks there were many students with good credentials that Singer worked with. And with those students, he did provide the normal services of a college admissions counselor. But for others, he was cutting corners, including exaggerating some college applications. So if a student he was working with didn't have enough academic achievements to get into a college, but their parents really wanted them to go there, he would find another way to get them in.
We hear from a test prep expert named Akil Bello, and I think he truly says it best throughout the show. If you're a well-to-do parent in a school with 500 seniors, your child is getting just a fraction of the attention you want your child to get. So you do what you do. You apply money to the problem, and you find somebody who will independently help adjust your kid and help your kid through this process. It makes sense. You have the money, you spend the money.
And you think, I guess you kind of think that you're spending it on good too, right? You're trying to help it, theoretically, your kid get into a good school.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we hear from Alexandra Bering. She says her parents hired Singer to give her guidance on SAT prep and to narrow her focus on the colleges that she's interested in. We also hear from someone named Leonora Lee, a former client, and she says he was the go-to college counselor at the time. But she says she knows one acquaintance who worked with Singer, and that person says Singer told him he could potentially get him into a school for a certain amount of money.
Ooh, scandal.
Yup.
The show says that Singer started fabricating these kids' applications to colleges. He would fabricate their ethnicity. For instance, if they were white, he would say that they were Hispanic for affirmative action, which that just blows my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because at some point in time, I mean, I feel like realistically at big schools, like they're not going to specifically walk around and be like, oh, nope, that's not right. But I feel like it's just the nerve to do that.
Right. But I think they mentioned too, some of these kids didn't even know this was happening.
Which is really sad. So the
Mhm.
parents would do these deals with Singer, and the kids would never know, and they truly thought they were getting into these schools
On their own merit.
So during this whole process, Singer, we're told, then founded what he called The Key, which is a profit college counseling service. He also founded what he called the Key Worldwide Foundation. It just reminds me of like Prestige Worldwide.
Is that from Step Brothers?
Yes.
That's my husband's favorite
I got my,
movie.
what is it? The boats?
I got boats.
Boats and Hoes?
I think so.
I haven't watched that movie in forever, but that's a classic. I love
Prestige
it.
Worldwide.
He was a profit college counseling service, but he also founded the Key Worldwide Foundation, which was a non-profit that is exempt from paying federal income tax.
Right.
That's a big one.
Mm-hmm. So he would give presentations at places like the country club to get business. And we get to hear a bit of what his pitch was like during a recreation of a phone call with a prospective client. And here's how it goes. We are a $290 million company that I own with 1,000 employees across the U.S., 280 internationally. We help the wealthiest families in the U.S. get their kids into school. We have every NBA owner, every NFL owner. We've got everybody.
I mean, truthfully, if I was a parent and wanting my kid to get into a school, I would be like, well, okay, all these other people are using him. Like, I might as well too.
It's just truly,
You know?
I mean, if you hear every NBA owner, every NFL owner is using this guy,
Sign me up.
I mean, it sounds legit.
Yep.
And he does go on to explain how his methods work.
He has.
I knew it. I knew you were going to laugh at this.
You knew I was going to laugh at this.
I'm going to make you say it.
The show calls it the backdoor tactic.
I have tears.
Okay. So the show calls it the. Can you say it? Can you say it?
The show.
I have the mind of a like teenage boy.
Definitely. Okay. This was so good. I mean, just the amount of times it took you to say this, it's so ridiculous because it's not even a big deal, but the way your mind works, I love it. Okay. He goes on to explain how his methods work. One of them is the backdoor tactic. Your face, I cannot. That is where someone donates a very large amount of money to give a student a second look at the university. And so, we have to use this word again, right? It's not every time.
I know. So somebody by the name of Perry Kalmus, who is an independent education consultant, says that a lot of colleges won't actually guarantee the admission. So these people might write a check for $3 million and the kid can still end up getting rejected.
That's some BS, for real.
Seriously. He says, quote, I think if you're not writing a check for $10 to $20 million, I'm not even sure it moves the needle enough.
How many people have 10 to 20 million doll hairs to donate?
To just laying around to donate. That's crazy. We learned that Singer was offering his services and attempting to guarantee admission at these schools for quote bargain basement prices of $300,000 to $500,000.
I mean, compared to 10 to 20 million, absolutely bargain basement price.
So that was the backdoor tactic. Now, we also hear about Singer's what he calls a side door tactic. He would have parents donate a sum of money to his foundation to conceal the fact that they were, in fact, bribe payments. And on the show, they say between 2011 and 2018, parents paid Singer approximately 25 million with an M million to bribe coaches and university officials.
You wrote holy moly.
Holy moly, indeed.
In one recreation of a conversation, Singer says to use his side door at Harvard, it's about $1.2 million. He also says he's going to do 730 of these side doors that year. So 730 times 1.2 million.
Cha-ching!
Yeah. This was around 2019, by the way. Although now that we hear he fabricates things, though, Jen, how believable is it? I mean, is he just saying that he's got 730 side doors going, or is it for real?
I mean, I think it also goes into this whole where he said, we are a $290 million company that I own, that they have every NBA owner and every NFL owner. Like it kind of all kind of falls in
I mean,
that.
you don't know what you can believe and what you
Exactly.
can't. Also, what does this whole thing say about the parents? There is some deep stuff happening here. We hear from Barbara Kalmuth, an independent education consultant. She says admission to college has become a status symbol. Your status increases if your child is at a, quote, elite institution. She says it's all about bragging rights.
100%. You see people walking around with Harvard sweatshirts now all the time. Those people did not go to Harvard.
No.
It's a status thing.
Another independent education consultant, Perry Kalmus, repeats a line he says is heard often in the industry. The parents are applying to college, he says. The kid is the vehicle through which they apply to college. And I wrote, insert mind blown emoji. It's about the egos of these parents.
100%. My kid goes to Brown. My kid goes to one of these huge Ivy Leagues. That makes me look better.
Yeah, he says if you're a parent and you didn't get to go to Harvard, this is your chance to go to Harvard.
I want to go to Harvard.
Mind, he says, in your warped mind.
So I can wear that Harvard sweatshirt. Be cool.
In your warped mind.
I wrote on here that I love this next part. We hear again from Akil Bello, the test prep expert, who says it's typically accepted that Ivy League institutes are the best in the country.
Institutions.
Akil Bello says the difference between those Ivy League institutes and other schools have almost nothing to do with academics. He says that US News started ranking these colleges in the 80s, and those rankings are based on one thing, and that is prestige.
Prestige worldwide.
Oh, I love that movie. I want to go back and watch Step Brothers now.
That is one movie I can watch over and over, and I'm never bored.
Oh, yeah.
I don't get tired of it.
Oh, yeah. We then learn the root of the word prestige.
This is good.
Apparently, it's a French word. I don't know why, but I want to say it prestige.
Like croissant?
Yeah, I don't say that. I say croissant, but
croissant.
Prestige is a French word, and it means something none of us even realize. It means deceit.
Deceit!
Mhm.
How does that happen? We think, in my mind, prestige is just such a different word.
Fancy.
Than deceit.
Mhm.
That's nuts to me.
The show says that Singer would bribe coaches at universities to guarantee admission. So what he would do, this I thought was so shady. He would ask parents to have their children pose in photographs playing a sport that they didn't even play. So the show showed him editing kids' pictures as if they played water polo, or he edited people's pictures to look like they were on the crew team, even though they never, in fact, played water polo or they never, in fact, rowed crew. I think you row crew. I don't know. It's like the little thing on a boat where
That
they
is
like
not
row.
a sport that we had in school.
No. He then would turn around and use that sport picture to secure them admission to an elite university.
We learned that some of these kids were under the impression that even though they were not athletic, the reason they were doing this is that someone at the university was going to help them with that. And that was the reason they were given to pose for these photos. So, hey, pose for this photo like you're on the water polo team or the crew team. Someone at the university is going to help you be more athletic.
If I was a high schooler and my folks were telling me, hey, Jen, go pretend to be a gymnast, I can't even do a cartwheel. How am I going to be on a university gymnastics team? You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying, but think about it. If my parents told me to go pose on a balance beam and said, hey, this is part of your college admissions. I'm going to take a few pictures of you on the balance beam. People at college are going to help you become more athletic, help you with your balance. I don't know what they said, something probably like that. And they're my parents. I mean, I would probably believe them.
You wouldn't think that's really odd?
If it came from my parents, no, because I've never known them to lie to me. Like, I've never known them to be prestige like that. And by prestige, I mean deceitful.
It baffles me. The show goes on to show a phone call, which was recorded by the FBI and reenacted, where Singer tells a dad about the cost of Harvard. Now, as in how much the dad would have to donate to get his kid into Harvard, not how much the tuition actually is. Singer is seen on the show in the recreation telling this dad that he had done over 700 of these side door deals to arrange admission, and there was absolutely nothing to worry about. Singer says that kids have two options basically to get into college. The front door, where they get accepted normally through standard admissions process, like you submit your application, your test scores, your high school transcripts, so forth, just the normal way. And then there's the back door, where a donation needs to be made to the university. And as we stated before, that donation could run upwards of $45 million at certain schools.
That's nuts.
The show stated that $45 million at schools like Harvard. Stanford was apparently asking for about $50 million, the show says. And that amount still didn't guarantee admission.
It doesn't guarantee. How much do you think it costs to build a building?
A lot of money.
Like $50 million?
Probably. I don't know.
Can you imagine if you donated $50 million and they had this whole building built and it's probably named after you because you made the donation and your kids still can't get in?
I'm pissed. One of the people that we hear from in the show, and I actually really liked him. He seems,
yes.
I genuinely feel like he has a good heart.
Oh my gosh, he looks so remorseful.
His name is John Vandemore. Now, John Vandemore was a sailing coach at Stanford, and he truthfully seems like a really, really good guy. He accepted, the show says, 2 donations from Singer in exchange for 2 spots at the school. Now, the show shows him unknowingly accept what he thought was just donations to his sailing program.
Mm-hmm.
Vandemore on the show says that Singer called him one day and introduced himself and asked him for an in-person meeting. Sure, why not? So Vandemore met with Singer the next day about recruiting, and Vandemore says that the conversation ended with Singer talking about a girl named Molly Zhao, but that Vandemore had said his recruiting was done for the year, so he wasn't considering her, and told Rick that. Well, he says that Rick called him and asked if there were any other ways that her family could support, because they're pretty wealthy and interested in donating $1 million. Vandemore says that his athletic director had said that it was something that they could do so these people could donate to the school, but that $1 million was not enough to have an impact with any kind of admissions. So in August of the next year, Vandemore says he got a call from Singer saying that Molly got into the university. She was going to Stanford, and thanked him. Vandemore in the show looks a little like befuddled, like, I didn't really do anything, but
Okay.
cool, thanks for calling. And Vandemore said he didn't do anything to get her in, but Singer told him that Molly's family still wanted to donate $500,000 to the sailing program. I mean, that's a lot of money. I feel like, especially for an organization like sailing, rather than football or one of the bigger, I think, moneymakers for a school, like, that's huge.
Right.
Vandemore says he received the check and took it to the athletic director, who said he knew Rick Singer.
The speculation is that the check could have been Singer's way of putting down a down payment for access to the Stanford sailing program. We also learned that for some, or maybe all of coaches everywhere, fundraising is part of their job. And that's probably why they weren't turning away money.
I never knew that. I guess, I mean, it makes sense, but I have never thought about that fundraising is a coach's job at a university.
Yeah, me neither.
In December of 2018, the show says that Vandemore met with the athletic director, who told him he was doing well with his fundraising. Vandemore on the show says Singer was pushing him hard about looking at this particular student. Singer had said that he was going to donate another $150,000 to the sailing program so Vandemore could hire an assistant coach, which he apparently really needed, and that Singer wanted to continue the relationship with him. Take a look at the candidate Singer wanted him to look at. That's kind of where we leave off with Coach John Vandemore. We learn on the show, and we will discuss Vandemore a little more toward the end of this episode. So Vandemore kind of like just continues on the sailing program. Life is normal.
Right.
We hear that college testing favors rich people. And that's because rich people have the money for these like test prep things, which makes total sense.
I remember being in high school, and I knew that there were two big tests that you took to go to college. I didn't realize until probably maybe the middle of my senior year that people were doing test prep. I didn't know this was a thing.
Yeah. I went to Barnes and Nobles and I just bought like an SAT book and worked my way through that.
Yeah, I thought it was just, you took a test and whatever you get on the test is how you're going to get into college. And I feel like by the time I figured out people were doing this test prep, it was kind of too late for me, like I didn't have time to do all this prep work. And realistically, I don't think my parents were going to buy me a test prep book. They wanted me to go to college, but it wasn't you've got to get into Harvard or you got to get into one of these schools. It's just, you're going to go to college.
Yeah.
Whatever college you get into, that's what you're going to go to. But there wasn't a whole big to do about prepping for these tests and making sure I went to a prestigious college.
Exactly.
At the sequel college. I love that word now.
Or the show goes into the topic of testing. And this is another way that Singer would help, and I use help in quotes, these students. So the show says he would have kids take tests that labeled them as having a learning disability, which meant that when it was time to take their SAT or their ACT, the show shows Singer talking to someone and telling them that when their kid takes the disability test, to dumb it down and not be as smart as she actually is. So let's backtrack that.
Okay.
So he would talk to these parents and have the parents get their child disability tested, dumb it down so it would appear as if the child would have a learning disability. And the reason for this is because when a student is taking a standardized test, the student would then be left alone in a room with a proctor if they're labeled as having a learning disability, and would have added time to take the test. The student writes the answers on a sheet of paper and then gives it to the proctor. Well, Singer, the show says, would hire and pay for a proctor who then would take the test sheet that the student had given and get a nearly perfect score, or whatever score that they want this child to get. So the kid would hand in the test to the proctor. They're literally sitting in one room. The proctor's at the front of the room. In the episode, we see this. The student is sitting there testing. She finishes it, walks it up to the proctor, hands it in, and she literally thinks she just finished this test. She walks outside and she's just like, you know, the way you are after a test, like, oh, that was hard, it was easy, whatever. And then the proctor takes her answer sheet, puts it to the side, takes the test and a new answer sheet, and the proctor literally takes the test. And the show says for $10,000, Singer would hire this guy named Mark Riddell to take the test for the students. Now, he was apparently somebody who worked for college test prep, and then he needed more money. And so he started taking these tests for Singer.
I wrote that it's so sad that these students had no idea that they didn't earn this score. Imagine being an average student and you're getting a near perfect score on one of these standardized tests. You are probably walking around thinking you're some kind of genius.
I'm a genius.
You're an average student normally, in high school, and now you're getting a near perfect score on a standardized test.
It's sad. It's crazy. It's just the level of all of this.
I can't believe that he found someone to do this.
All of this is slowly going to be coming out. All these backdoor tactics, these side door tactics, the pretending to be athletes when they're not actually athletes. So apparently someone is arrested on an unrelated securities charge. And that person makes a deal with the FBI and said that a coach at Yale asked him for a bribe. And the FBI at this point is like, what? Tell me more. So apparently the show says that the Yale soccer coach named Rudy Meredith had been working with parents to get their kids into Yale under the guise that they were going to be soccer players at Yale. When the government, apparently, according to the show, asked Rudy Meredith about it, he ratted. He started singing like a canary on Rick Singer, and that's how the FBI got involved in this admissions scandal. Mm-hmm. Rudy Meredith, we're told, then became a cooperating informant because he didn't want to go to jail. And at this point, Rick Singer is arrested. And this just blew my mind. Rick Singer started cooperating with the FBI. So he managed to get people who had used him in trouble. By the show says and shows him, the actor who's portraying Rick Singer, calling these people and being like, remember that time? And remember that
time you gave me a whole bunch of money to get your kid into school? That'd be so suspicious if I just got a call.
Right?
I would say, I don't know what you're talking about. Click, click.
We find out that Yale soccer coach Rudy Meredith was arrested for accepting more than $860,000 in bribes. The show says that Singer called Vandemore randomly, like totally randomly, and said that he was wanting to donate $160,000 and give the rest later. So, and he was doing this for a deposit on our relationship. And the coach, Vandemore, was like, those words really stood out to me. Deposit on our relationship. He, on the show, says that he thought it meant Singer would be bringing more recruits to consider.
Yeah.
That phone call, little to John Vandemore's knowledge, was recorded by the FBI. And I mean, truthfully, it doesn't sound good.
Nope.
This made me kind of sad. I mean, we knew it was going to happen, but like we've talked about before, like he just seems like a kind soul.
He seems a little shell-shocked to be doing this interview. Like he still can't believe
that he's part of this.
Yeah.
So in February of 2019, Vandemore says he's woken up to the IRS and the FBI coming to ask him about the college admissions and Rick Singer. And he's charged with mail fraud, tax fraud, and wire fraud, each of which carry 20 years in prison.
Oof.
That's very scary. So Vandemore hires an attorney right away, and he ended up pleading guilty in federal court or a single count of racketeering conspiracy and admitted to accepting payments to his sailing program in exchange for admitting 2 students to the university. Vandemore was the only indicted person interviewed in this docudrama that we watched, Operation Varsity Blues, the college admission scandal, on Netflix. He claimed to be largely unaware of what was going on while he was talking to Singer. We hear on the show that even though he pled guilty, the judge who sentenced him said the coach was probably the least culpable of any person involved in this whole thing.
Probably one of the most naive.
Yeah. And Vandemore was sentenced to 2 years of supervised release, which in the show they show him wearing like an ankle monitor thing.
Okay, we're at March 19th, 2019 now, where 50 people are charged for their part in the scandal. This is nationwide, including Lori Loughlin from Full House, Felicity Huffman, who we mentioned from Desperate Housewives. And according to Time magazine, Loughlin and her husband paid $500,000 to get their children admitted to the University of Southern California.
How did they do this? Can we talk about how the show says they did this? Because I don't think we touch on this. In the show, they hired Singer, and the show states that they took pictures of their daughters on rowing machines and submitted them to the University of Southern California, USC, as coxswain, which are the rowing people.
Yeah.
It was a huge thing on the show, and the this docudrama focused quite a bit on it because they interviewed people who knew these girls who were like, they have never rowed. They're not in school for this. They don't do this at school. They're not part of a team. And apparently the school counselor, the show says, had questions about this to the point where he started calling USC officials. And the show alleges that the parents of the girls were having these conversations with the counselor to stop causing trouble, like all this kind of stuff. Huffman also was charged as part of this.
She paid $15,000 to Singer to doctor her daughter's SAT score. And in October of 2019, Felicity Huffman served 11 days in jail. December 2020, Lori Loughlin finished a 2-month sentence, and her husband, fashion designer Massimo Giannulli, spent 5 months in prison.
So at this point in the show, Rick Singer is just living his normal life. On the screen, it says that Stanford said that it had distributed all $770,000 it received from Singer following recommendations from an outside philanthropic group. The university denies that the athletic director knew of Rick Singer or any inappropriate gifts made through his foundation. They also deny that any amount of money can have an influence on admissions. I'm giving you a look.
Yeah.
And on the screen, it says that Rick's side door into colleges is now closed. The back door remains open at many colleges for those willing to pay.
Interesting.
So we hear that Rick Singer pled guilty to 4 felonies, and he was sentenced to 42 months in prison in January of 23. I went down a rabbit hole, as I sometimes do. So according to ABC News, they published an article in October of 2024 saying that Singer is once again advising students.
That's crazy.
Uh-huh.
I would think that part of, the whole arrest and serving time is that you just can't do that anymore.
Uh-huh. So the article says that last year, while Singer was in federal prison, a high school student emailed him asking him to help with his college applications and basically asked him if he could get into his top choice school with his grades. So he wanted to know, hey, here are my grades. Is this good enough to get into a college? Which, can I just say, as a student, I mean, it's kind of smart to do. This guy's in prison. He probably doesn't have much to do. Might as well. But then there's also this flip side of it. How would you think of that?
How would you think to email this guy?
Yeah. And then it's also the fact that he has email. I don't know. For some reason, when I think of prisons, I think of snail mail. I don't know about all that. So the ABC News article states that Singer wrote back to the student and offered some pointers. The student was then accepted to his top choice school. Now, the article goes on to say that Singer has launched a new venture called ID Future Stars.
Prestige worldwide.
Yeah, which the company's website says 80 to 96% of acceptance rate to the first choice schools.
Wow.
I mean, what in the world? And I went down even further. Apparently, according to Town and Country magazine, Singer was released in jail in October of 24 after spending 16 months in prison, and he's now out and about.
Out and about, living a life, and apparently doing the same old
college
job.
Tutoring. And
yeah,
I just truthfully, I have a lot of questions about the on the screen when they popped up in this show. Rick's side door into college is now closed. The back door remains open at many colleges for those willing to pay. I have so many questions.
Like what?
Like, what schools? How much? Like, it's crazy.
I have to imagine though that people, I mean, since all this happened, I would imagine that people are a bit more careful now these days than to do, breaking the law and stuff. I feel like they would know that they're being watched or listened to, or it's gonna,
so?
I mean, I would think that they know that if it happened once, it could happen again. So just be careful.
And it also brings up the debate of, would you do this for your kids?
No.
Really?
No. I mean, seriously, think about, I think it's incredibly sad that these kids, I mean, I don't have kids, so who knows what I would and wouldn't do, but I would think I would not do this for my kids, because I just think it's so sad that they were walking around thinking that they were these smart kids and they weren't.
I mean, I feel if I had this amount of money laying around, and I would do anything for my kids.
Yeah, sure. And I feel like it hurts them at some point.
But it's one of those things, like, if your kid, I think, has this dream, you as a parent will do anything to help them achieve that. And I can totally understand how these parents got caught up in this. But we talked about it though. Like, people with a lot of money, their kids do end up at better universities. They do.
They do end up at better universities, but does it really? The only advantage I see it having is that they make connections.
They do.
These connections can get them into better positions and better paying jobs or whatever. And that can definitely help them. But I think developing as a person, it mentally handicaps you because you're not working for it.
See, I feel like Tina has so much of a moral better compass than I do.
Well, thank you.
Let us know what you think, what you would do. We're on socials. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook.
Two Crime Newsies.
Send us an email.
twocrimenewsies@gmail.com.
I would love to know what the consensus is out there.
Yeah, we would love to hear your thoughts, and also give us a rating. Throw us some 5-star ratings. We love to see it. Also, what kind of crime would you like us to cover? Do you like this kind of scandal crime? Do you prefer spy crime? Do you prefer
my kind of crime?
Your kind of crime?
My kind of crime.
It's
the gory crime.
Okay, yeah, that's what it is. Or do you appreciate the mix? I kind of like the mix.
I kind of like the mix too. I feel like it's a good toss up to do like dark stuff one week, lighter stuff the next week.
Mm-hmm.
Let us know if you want to hear something special, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Yep.
All right. Bye.